produced and broadcast by the Zeus Radio Network for thegolfdirector.com.
The Rules of Golf is produced and broadcast by the Zeus Radio Network for thegolfdirector.com. I'm Martin Woodhouse, and today we're going to finish up a couple of things we started last week. We were talking about playing the ball as it lies. We looked at one or two decisions. There's a big decision that I wanted to go over today, so we'll finish that, and then I would like to get back into the principles book a little bit, talking about things unfair. Yeah, there's lots of those. I just wanted to let you guys know that on the website, thegolfdirector.com, there is a community link there, and we've just opened a thread, a group for the Rules of Golf. So anything you want to put on there, by all means, go ahead and ask your questions, try and catch me out.
There you go. That's what it's for. Yeah.
Anything you'd like to talk about in future shows, and I'll certainly get on there, and we'll try and get that going.
And I'll help just a little bit with the navigation to get there. If you mouse over the navigation at the top of the page on thegolfdirector.com, over the home tab, you'll see the community tab pop up.
Right.
Click the community tab. There are also a couple other places you can get to it, but that's an easy way. Go there, and the group will be displayed over on the right side of the community page. You can click, go in there, start a thread about whatever rule you want to do. If you, like Martin said, if you catch him, you call him out. I don't think you're going to catch him doing anything wrong.
I don't know. You never can tell.
He told me he made a mistake once, or he thought he did, but he was wrong.
I was wrong. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Last week we were talking about, we've been talking about the two great principles: playing the course as you find it, play the ball as it lies, not touching your ball from teeing it up to taking it out of the hole. And last week we looked at Rule 13, which is playing the ball as it lies. And one of the things that came up was you are entitled to fairly take a stance. And that's one of the most breached rules as well, because you'll see people, getting in there and bending things, breaking things, that type of thing. So there is a big decision here, which I just want to take the time to read. It's 13-2/1, and this is an explanation of fairly taking the stance. As you probably know now, most of the decisions are in question and answer form, so the question is, Rule 13.2 states that a player must not improve the position or lie of his ball, the area of intended swing or stance, or his line of play, or a reasonable extension of that line beyond the hole, by moving, bending, breaking, anything growing or fixed, including immovable obstructions and objects defining out of bounds. An exception permits the player to do so in fairly taking his stance. And the question is, what does that mean? What is the significance of fairly? And the answer is, it's fairly long, but it's important, so I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing. Without fairly, the exception would permit improvement of position or lie, area of intended stance or swing or line of play, that could be said to be taking a stance. The use of fairly is intended to limit the player to what is reasonably necessary to take a stance for the selected stroke without unduly improving the position of the ball, lie, area of intended stance or swing or line of play. Thus, in taking his stance for the selected stroke, the player, this is the key, should select the least intrusive course of action which results in the minimum improvement of the position or lie of the ball, intended stance, area or swing or line of play. The player is not entitled to a normal stance or swing. He must accommodate the situation in which his ball is found and take a stance as normal as the circumstances permit. And by the way, you're not entitled to see the golf ball either. If the ball's under a bush, you can't bend anything out of the way in order to see the golf ball. And what is fair must be determined given in the light of all the circumstances. And there are a couple of examples here. Examples of actions which do not constitute fairly taking a stance are backing into a branch or a young sapling if that is the only way to take a stance for the selected stroke, even if this causes the branch to move out of the way or the sapling to bend or break. So that's okay if that's the only way you can get to the golf ball. Bending a branch of a tree with the hands in order to get under the tree to play the ball are examples that are okay. Examples of actions which do not constitute fairly taking a stance would be deliberately moving, bending, or breaking branches with the hands, leg, or the body to get them out of the way of the backswing or stroke, standing on a branch to prevent it interfering with the backswing or stroke, hooking one branch on another or braiding two weeds for the same purpose, bending with a hand a branch obscuring the ball after the stance has been taken, bending an interfering branch with the hands, leg, or body in taking a stance when the stance could have been taken without bending the branch. So there are certain things you can do, but the key there is to take the minimal.
As usual, that brings up questions.
Of course.
Okay, I got called on this at playing at Heather Glen in a Saturday group that George, our host of Golf Wrap and TGD Today, does every Saturday. He takes 15 to 30 guys out, and we play different courses around. I join them occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this particularly because we were at Heather Glen, and can't remember if it's 9 or 18, but it's the hole that comes down. You approach the water and go across the water to the clubhouse, and I had hit my drive to the left into right in the edge of the woods.
Right.
So there was a bush there, and I couldn't get to the ball. There's no way I could get to the ball except for I backed up on the bush.
Sounds okay.
And pushed the bush back and and then just hit the ball out into the fairway.
Okay.
And the two guys that I was playing with argued that I should be penalized. And didn't matter after that because I hit my next one into the water. So, so I was, basically screwed the hole up anyway.
Right.
But I have been since then thinking that I'd done something wrong. But you've corrected it and said I'm okay there.
You're okay as long as there was no other way of getting to the golf ball.
There was no other way of getting to it.
And even if it involves breaking something or.
Now, am I entitled to? You said I'm not entitled to see the ball, so I'm probably not entitled to. Hitting the ball right-handed when I'm a right-handed player. If the left-handed stroke is the only stroke I could take, how does that affect this rule?
Well, that's an interesting one because, and I'm going to get into taking relief and so forth. You can play any shot that you consider reasonable, but you can't play an unreasonable shot in order to get relief. Let's say, for example, my ball's close to a cart path.
Yep. And
it's in front of me to where I'm not standing on it, the ball's not on it, but I don't like the situation, I'm behind a tree or whatever. So as a right-handed player, I don't have any interference from that path. Right. However, if I was left-handed, I would have interference and I would be entitled to relief.
Got it, yeah.
So I can't just say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and play this shot left-handed. That way I'm going to get relief.
Yeah.
So
now I want to ask you a clarification on one more thing on the branch situation because I was a little bit confused about what you can do with your hands to move the branch and what you can't do because there was a couple things you said there you can do.
Yes.
But you got to be careful not to hook them, braid them, whatever you do, that kind of thing.
Right. Generally speaking, you don't want to get your hands involved at all. If a rules official sees you getting your hands involved, he's really going to.
I remember you said that in your last show, and I had the opportunity to play the next day after that show. And I'm watching, and again, it's George Honeycutt, the host of one of our shows here. And George is a player now. He's a gamer. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
So he's over in the weeds getting ready to hit his ball, and I noticed he kept both hands on the club.
Probably listen to the show.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought, George knows what he's doing over
That's
there.
right, that's
Because
right.
I really wasn't aware of that until you said it.
Yeah, the only one there in those exceptions are if you need to kind of get down under a bush or under a tree or something. To
You can
duck
lift a
down
branch up
underneath.
to get under it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that. That's okay.
That's
it does
amazing.
get a
Yeah.
little, a little bit of a grey area there, but
Yeah.
if you're just doing your honest best to avoid any damage or bending stuff,
Yeah. Cool.
you're going to be okay.
Well, see, now I feel better already.
All right,
I was right.
there you go.
Yeah.
Usually are. Okay, just going back now to the principles.
Okay.
We've been talking about those two great principles, playing the course you find it. There are some things which in Tufts refers to as things unfair. Now, I think I've already said this. Golf is not a fair game. It's equitable. It treats like situations alike, treats everybody the same way. But there are certain things which are considered not part of the game.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit from Tufts here. A golf course covers such a large area, there can be many activities, great variety of conditions. The rules recognize that all activity, with all this activity and whatnot, golfing and otherwise, can quite readily create unfair interference with the player. This establishes the principle that, when it is possible to do so, relief should be granted for interference which may be unfair or outside the player's match. For convenience, it's easier to consider this matter of interference under separate headings. Interference caused by those things which are in motion, and interference caused by those things which are principally inanimate and motionless. Under the first heading, interference by things in motion is pretty much restricted to interference with the ball, since a little patience or a momentary delay will usually end any interference to the player by those things which move. Most of these kinds of interferences come from what the rules term an outside agency. Aside from those agents specifically mentioned in the definition, some of the more common outside agencies include a dog that runs away with the ball, a spectator who steps on it, a player from another group who plays it, and a little boy who runs off with it. So those are all outside agencies. We actually had that happen this past week at the Golf Academy. We have tournaments every week, every Monday, 8 tournaments actually. And we did have that happen. We were out at River Oaks, and there was a lady on the golf course with 2 or 3 kids running around, and they were just running around picking up golf balls and just having a good old time and collecting golf balls. And, of course, they picked up one of the players' balls and ran off with it.
Wow.
So that's a situation that does happen. You know how to deal with that one, Jeff?
I chase the kid down and take the ball away from him. I don't know.
That's one of those rare situations where that's not treated as a lost ball. In other words, you don't have to take stroke and distance.
Oh, okay.
It comes under Rule 18-1. It's a ball at rest, moved by an outside agency. If we know, in other words, if we have knowledge or virtual certainty is the term that we use, knowledge or virtual certainty, that the ball was indeed taken by an outside agency, we're just going to put another ball into play at that spot. If we know the precise location, we'll place it. Usually that's not going to be the case. You're going to know roughly where it was, but not exactly. So you would go ahead and drop a ball at that spot. But as I said, you do have to have virtual certainty. You can't just make the assumption. I mean, for example, you've hit a ball in the trees, and there's another group coming down the fairway in the opposite direction, and they kind of walk by where you think your ball might be, and then you look for it, can't find it. You can't just say, well, I guess those guys must have picked it up.
Yeah.
Well, no. The question is, could it be somewhere else? Could it be that you just didn't find it, or it got a deflection, or hit a tree, or was plugged, or something like that? You wouldn't have enough evidence. You wouldn't have virtual certainty to be able to do that.
And see, that recalls an instance too. And in this case, it's normal for me to hit the ball into another fairway. But I can't remember where we were playing. But I think it was up at Sea Trail, and I hit a ball left, and there was an area between the fairways, and I saw the ball bounce into the other fairway. I just couldn't
Right.
see it lying in the other fairway,
Sure.
and there was a group coming up that fairway, and it was in the area of where they had hit their drives. Okay, and when we went down, there's no more balls in the fairway anywhere, and we determined that they picked it up. But and I don't know if that's enough to call virtual certainty or not, but I saw the ball going there. Everybody on the tee box saw the ball going there, and everybody thought
Yeah.
it's in the fairway. You know, we even went through the fairway into the rough on the other side in that
Right.
direction, looked for it, couldn't find anything.
Virtual certainty, most rules officials are going to say 95%
Yeah,
certainty. There's virtually no chance that they didn't take it.
yeah,
And it depends on the situation. I mean, if there was a lot of rough where it could have gotten lost in the rough, then you wouldn't have it. But if everything was closely mown and it's all wide open and there's really no chance that it could be somewhere else, then you have enough evidence to do that.
cool.
Yeah, it's called virtual certainty now. That term actually changed. I want to say 2008 or 2004. I'm not sure. It used to be called reasonable evidence. But that was the definition has not changed. It still means 95% certainty, but people would interpret that to mean better than 50%, and that's not what it was. Which is why they changed the definition to be more accurate, really.
Wow.
Virtual certainty, not reasonable evidence.
Listening to you, Martin, is an education every Friday. And for you folks that are listening other times, whatever day you're listening. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, coming back to things unfair. So, we're just talking about outside agencies, the little boy running off with it.
Uh-huh.
And the principle states that relief from interference shall be granted when it is possible to do so. Obviously, when a ball in flight strikes an unfortunate spectator, there is no possible way to determine where the ball might have gone if the spectator had been more alert. Therefore, the rules do not provide relief for an accidental interference by an outside agency. When a ball in motion, other than after a stroke on the putting green, it's a little bit different, but perhaps as a consolation to the aggrieved player, they do establish a special definition for this unhappy circumstance. You know what that definition is called?
No, sir.
That's a rub of the green.
Rub?
That's a rub of the green. I think everybody's heard that term,
I've heard
rub
it.
of the green.
I didn't know that's what it.
But it has a specific definition. People misuse that term to mean a bad break or something unlucky or something like that. But that's not what it means in the definitions. It means it's simply a ball in motion, deflected by an outside agency. That's all it means. It may wind up in a worse situation than it would have. It may be in a better situation. But that's what we call a rub of the green, 19-1.
19-1. What happened to Roy McIlroy this year when a ball actually ended up in a spectator's pocket?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a little bit different. It wasn't deflected. Something like it's happened. I can't remember who it was now. Somebody hit I think it was Sergio at one time hit a bird in flight with his tee shot. Hit the bird, and the ball just fell out of the sky along with the bird, the ball, and that's a rub of the green. That's a rub of the green. There's nothing you can do about that. We're going to give you relief where it's possible, but it's not possible to do that because we don't know what would have happened to that. So, and as he goes on to say, it should be observed, this definition applies to this specific occurrence. The generally accepted broader application of bad luck is not correct. It could be good luck. Rub of the green is sometimes a good thing. And then he goes on to say, however, there is one case of interference where a ball in motion which represents exceptional problems, the case of the ball going into a man's pocket, which there you go, or into the back seat of an automobile on the way to town. Obviously, the ball in such a case can hardly be played from where it lies. The rule, therefore, makes an exception for the ball in motion which has lodged in an object which itself is in motion, since the point at which the lodged ball in the moving object can be fixed with some degree of accuracy, the ball is put into play directly under that place. So if you hit a ball in the back of a maintenance vehicle, for example,
Right.
and he drives it up on the green and dumps your ball out on the green, you don't get to play it from there. You don't get to play it from there. You've got to drop a ball at the point where it entered the
Now,
moving outside.
Is that the case? Even if the example stated a car that was on its way to town.
Right.
Now, if the car just kept going with your ball in the back seat,
You're not going to be able to recover the golf ball, obviously, so you're able to put another ball into play. And the point where you put it into play is the point where the ball went into the car while it was in motion. So, I mean, it could happen. You bounce into a golf cart.
I don't have to go to Walmart and hit back or anything.
No, you don't have to use the exact ball. So that's with things in motion. When interference by an outside agency takes place in connection with a ball which is at rest, it's usually possible to determine the place from which the ball was moved. The rules therefore provide that the ball must be placed under 18.1. However, it should be noted that through the green or in a bunker or a water hazard, if the exact spot from which the ball cannot be determined, which is oftentimes the case, it is to be dropped and not placed unless it's on the putting green, in which case you're always going to place it. Well, there are a couple of times actually where you do drop a ball on the putting green, but generally, if it's the putting green, you're going to place that golf ball. Obviously, when it's not possible to fix the former location with sufficient accuracy, the best that can be done is to require the player by dropping, taking his chances on the lie he receives, just as in the play of the previous stroke he took his chances to the lie which the ball would move. On the putting green, as I said, you're going to place that ball. There are two moving agencies whose action on a ball at rest must be accepted, and these are exceptions. These are not outside agencies, and that is wind and water. Wind and water, because of course they're always going to be a factor in play, and it can't be proven. You can't prove that the wind caused the ball to go somewhere else. So wind and water are not outside agencies. And one other thing which I would include in that, and I think most people would be gravity. That's so if your ball is sitting on a slope on the putting green, and you replace that golf ball, and you step away, you're looking at the line, and that ball rolls away due to wind or gravity, it's not an outside agency, so we're just going to play the ball from where it comes to rest.
Now, that applies after you've marked the ball, even? If I mark the ball,
yes,
and position it, and then I walk away to look at the line, and
whether the marker's there or not makes no difference.
It doesn't matter. If it rolls from wherever it is, anytime it's on the green.
Yeah. If something has caused it to move,
water, wind, or gravity.
Water, wind, or gravity. Yeah. If something else like you or an outside agency has caused it to move, then we're going to replace that ball, and we come back to that principle, don't we? Of advancing your ball by playing strokes. Yeah. Playing strokes. And with the exception of wind or water. So, how are we doing on time?
We're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It always seems to go faster than I realize.
It does go very quickly.
So, the wind and water, which are always a factor of play, it should be noted by definition that a fellow competitor, again, just be careful with those definitions. A fellow competitor is the proper term for somebody playing with you in your group in a stroke play competition. He's not an opponent. He's not a partner. He's not. They use, the commentators on TV are terrible about this. They use things like playing partner. Yeah. Doesn't mean anything. They are fellow competitors, and they're outside agencies. In match play, your opponent is not an outside agency. An outside agency is something that's not part of the match, and your opponent obviously is. So match play and stroke play are a little bit different there as regards that. So it should be noted that outside agency. Therefore, the rules provide the same treatment for interference by a fellow competitor as they do for interference by an outside agency. A fellow competitor is an outside agency. So that's the first category. The second category of interference is caused by things which are inanimate. This sort of interference usually affects the player in the process of making his stroke, or it may concern the subsequent movement of his ball. In either case, it has to do with the sort of interference from which the rules provide relief before the execution of the stroke rather than after the execution, as was the case in the first type. The things that create interference come under 4 general headings. First, things which would normally be a part of the course but have become detached from it. We call those things loose impediments. They're loose impediments. They're natural. They're not fixed or growing. They're normally part of the course, but they've become detached from it, such as a limb broken from a tree, leaves, pine cones, that kind of thing. Secondly, man-made objects, which, although they may serve a useful purpose, are not a natural part of the course, regardless for the reason that for their reason for being there. And again, we have a name for those artificial things. We call them obstructions. Obstructions, and there are 2 kinds of obstructions: movable and immovable. So we don't have to deal with those. Movable obstructions, we're just going to move them.
Yeah.
If they're immovable, we're going to move the ball instead. So that's how we deal with those. So these are things that are considered not fair. They're not part of the game.
So if I could stop you just for a second.
Sure.
I always, every time you've mentioned something, I think of an occurrence where this came up.
Right.
If I'm hitting behind I hit my ball and it ends up right behind a sprinkler, one of those big green boxes on the course.
Yeah.
And it's sitting right against the thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's an immovable obstruction.
Yes, it is.
And what exactly are my options at that point?
Okay, well, first of all, we have to establish that interference exists. Interference means the lie of the ball, is the ball touching it, or interference with your stance. In other words, you can't make a stance to address the golf ball, or your area of intended swing.
Mm-hmm.
So the swing that you're going to take would involve hitting the thing. Notice it does not include your line of play or line of sight or anything like that.
Yeah.
So if you're 10 feet behind this thing and it's directly in your line,
I got to hit around it.
Yeah, you're not going to get relief for that.
And if it's laying up next to it, say three inches away from it, and my line of play is through it, I can't hit it through it, but yet I can take a shot parallel or opposite to it into the fairway.
It's your area of intended swing. So you got to think, what would I be doing if this thing wasn't here?
Yeah.
Right? And you'd be making a shot towards the green,
Right.
presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it comes back to what I was saying before. You cannot make some kind of unusual swing or direction of play in order to get
in order
there.
to get it.
Yeah. So if your only shot is to play sideways because of a tree or something like that, you can't say, well, if I was going to play in this direction, I would have interference.
But I want to make sure I understand the immovable obstruction.
Yes.
If my only option is to play sideways,
Mm-hmm.
do I have to play that sideways shot, even though my area of intended swing would have been forward? Do you understand my question?
Not quite.
Okay, because this happened.
So you're close to this thing.
I'm 3 inches away from the big green box.
Okay.
And it's between me and the green.
Right.
Obviously, I cannot swing toward the green with
Well,
this big green box.
Okay, but if the big green box were not there, you would be able to.
Absolutely.
You're entitled to relief.
Okay. So I don't have to hit it
No.
sideways
No.
into the fairway.
No.
Well, I'll be darned.
You just got to assume that it isn't there.
I'm here to
And
tell you,
what
man,
would
most
you-
people don't know the rules. Because
Yeah.
I was certainly advised wrong in that case.
No,
Yeah.
no. If there was something else that was causing you to have to play sideways, like a tree,
Yeah, that's not an immovable obstruction.
yeah, that's part of the golf course.
Yeah.
That's part of the golf course.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been very helpful, Martin.
Okay. So just finishing up on those things, the things that we consider unfair
Right.
or not part of the game. We've got our loose impediments.
Mhm.
Those are natural things which are part of the course, which have become detached. Then we've got our obstructions, which are man-made things. Man-made things, and that includes anything, by the way, that's been through any kind of process, any kind of manufacturing process. In other words, ice, natural ice, is a loose impediment. It's natural. It's not artificial. But if you dump ice out of a cooler, that's not a loose impediment. That's an obstruction. It's
I'll be
different
darned.
because it's been manufactured.
Mhm.
Manufactured ice is an obstruction. Or if you've got some logs of wood, branches, limbs those are loose impediments. If you put them together, nail them together, and make a bench, now you got yourself an obstruction.
Got it.
So there's been some kind of process
Got it.
to make it an obstruction. And then the final thing that is not considered part of the game, which is unfair, is abnormal ground conditions. Abnormal ground conditions. And again, that's a definition which we'll probably not get into today. It does not include things like just soft ground. You know, that's not abnormal. There's a whole rule about that, which we'll get into. It would include things like casual water, those type of things, or greenkeepers' workings, hole made by a greenkeeper, ground under repair, those types of things, and that's where the things we get relief from. So.
Very good. Yeah, very good.
That covers those things.
Awesome
Unfair,
show.
and
Awesome show.
I think next time we'll maybe get into those in more detail, the loose impediment thing, and
Yeah.
maybe some of the decisions as well, because there are an awful lot of decisions. It's interesting. The rules. I think I said probably in the first show that they're set out in a very logical way. Perhaps one day we'll go through that. There's a little group of rules there from 23 to 25, and those are the three things that we've just been talking about. 23 is loose impediments. 24 is obstructions. 25 is abnormal ground conditions. So that little group of rules covers things unfair.
Very important group.
Those three.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, they are. All right. So, I'm going to get my little script out here. TGD Radio and TV are produced and broadcast by the Zeus Radio Network for the GolfDirector.com. When visiting the Golf Director, navigate over to the featured golf courses page, where you'll find up-to-date information about course conditions, specials, and much more. Need help with your next golf vacation? Give us a call at 844-GO-GOLF-1. That's 844-464-6531. All of our TGD program is archived for listening and viewing on demand. To catch up on a show you may have missed, click on the TGD Radio, TGD TV tabs in the menu at thegolfdirector.com. This is Martin Woodhouse on behalf of us all here at the Golf Director. We thank you for tuning in. More TGD golf news and information coming up next.
Perfect. Nice show.